This is Gemara Pesachim Daf Ayin. Today's shir should be as closer for Shlema for Chaim Yitzchak Moshe ben Esther Ezel. Baruch Hashem, we received good news that he is home and recovering, and we're looking forward to being able to continue and having him back with learning together with the entire Chabura as we conclude and continue Pesachim. All our other Chaim Yitzchak ben Magi Meir ben Kir men Vavigel Michael Sipor Nasahil Uva Chaim and Sars on Suner Ezel Zarbas Genendu to Basim Chaisay Yisrael ben Mendel Eliezer President Shavalei Shem Snomi Shavik Shulchan of Al Davini Teriva Shol ben Tehila Daniel ben Chana Rezel Milk Chai Basmin Librach Musa, Yisrael. We pick it up on the bottom of Samuch Tes Amid Beis. We basically finish for now the Karban Pesach. Now we're going to discuss the other karbanos that go together with the Karban Pesach. And of course, through that, we're going to learn many more dinim about the Karban Pesach. Says the Mishnah, a Masai, the bottom of Samach Tasman Beis. A Masai maybe Chagiga Imai. When do you bring the Chagiga with it, with the Karban Pesach? And from the fact that we already see in the Mishnah, the Chagiga Imai, this is not referring to the regular Karban Chagiga that you have to bring on every Yontif of the Shalosh Regalim. Rather, this is referring to the Chagiga Imai, as we'll see in the Gemara, a special Chagiga that's brought together with the Karban Pesach. Bizman shuba bachol b'taira. When do you bring it? When the Karban Pesach is brought during the week. B'taira, if everyone is tar. Ubemuat, and if there are not so many people. However, ubizman shuba b'Shabbos, when the Karban Pesach is brought on Shabbos. Bimeruba, when there are a lot of people. Ubetama, and when they are tama. Bimeruba, then you do not bring the Karban Chagiga with it. So what's this Meruba? What's this Muat? So let's go down to 3 lines from the bottom in Rashi. Rashi says, Ubemuat, Shaya Pesach Muat Lachilas B'nei Chabura. The Pesach is not so much the people eating it. Va'ichlana Chagiga Tchila. So says Rashi, if you have a lot of people in the group, then you have a little bit of Pesach. Therefore what? Oichlana Chagiga Tchila, says Rashi. Teshia Pesach Gomar Sviyasan. So the Pesach completes your satiation, and that creates it into achila. So we're learning a very important thing over here, that the Karban Pesach has to be has to be the food that makes the person full. It's a similar concept we know about afikoimen, obviously. And therefore, let's say you have a lot of people on one animal. So how much Karban Pesach are you going to get? Not so much. So how are you going to make sure you're full? That's this Chagiga Imai. That's when you bring this Chagiga with the Karban Pesach in order to ensure that the people are full when they eat the Karban Pesach. So again, so if it's during the week, if you're tar, if it's Muat, meaning not Muat people, but Muat Pesach, then you bring the Chagiga with it. But if it's Shabbos, if it's Meruba, meaning what? You get a lot of the Pesach, therefore you don't need a Chagiga to fill you up. Therefore, you do not, or Tameh, then you do not bring the Ein Mavi'in Imai Chagiga. You don't bring the Chagiga with him. Ha'isa ba minat soin. This Chagiga was brought from flock, minat bakar, and from cattle, minat kvasim, from sheep, minat izim, from goats, minat zcharim, from males, minat kevos, from females, minat chol z'sheyamim v'leilecha, and it's eaten for 2 days and 1 night, which of course we're already starting to see a bit of discrepancies in the dinim between this Chagiga and the Karban Pesach. We know the Karban Pesach is 1-year-old male. We know the Karban Pesach is eaten for 1 day, 1 night, and these are going to be that which we discuss in the Gemara. Let's begin. Says the Gemara, Man Tana Diktani Chagiga. Who is the Tana that learns you bring this Karban Chagiga? Tana, we learned that the bringing of the animal is not the Shabbos. And we also learned the Mishnah that the Chagiga is not the Shabbos. And this is what the Mishnah means to be teaching us. When do you bring with it the Chagiga? That's what the Mishnah is teaching us. As you see in the last Rashi and Amid, Rashi speaks out, Vashmina, and what's it teaching us? That the Chagiga Nami, Lo Dachya Shabbos, Afilu Shchita delay, that no part of this Karban Chagiga is Deicha Shabbos. So says the Gemara, Rav Ashi, what do we see from here? Shmas Mina. We see from over here, Chagigas Arba Asar. This Chagiga of the 14th, which obviously is coming to differentiate between the Chagiga of the 15th, coming to differentiate between the Chagiga of the regular Shalosh Regalim. Says the Gemara, as we flip over to Ayin Amid Aleph, Lav Chagiga, Lav Chayvi, it's not a Chayv. Why? You bring it on Shabbos. You bring it regardless how much meat you have. You bring it if you're tamei. And therefore, for the fact you don't bring it in those scenarios, shows us it's not a chi of gomer. It's not an absolute obligation. We're rather bringing it to satiate the person. Therefore, only going to bring it in the scenarios where it is possible. Says the Gemara, My time asya, when there's not enough Karban Pesach, what's the reason that you bring it? Kedetanya, as we learned in the Brisa, and this is really where Rashi was obviously coming from. Chagiga abba ma Pesach, Chagiga that's brought with the Pesach nechal tchila. You first eat the Chagiga. Why? Kedei Pesach nechal asayva. So the Karban Pesach is eaten to fill you up, and that's the reason why you first eat the Chagiga, then you eat the Karban Pesach. So we're learning this is a unique Karban Chagiga. Again, this is a Karban Chagiga of every Yantif. This is a different Karban Chagiga, special carbon that is brought in order to fill up the person, but it's only going to be brought during the week b'taira and when there's not enough meat. But if there's enough meat for the Karban Pesach, if the one is Tamei or it is Shabbos, then you do not bring this additional Karban Chagiga. Says the Gemara 5 lines down, Ayin Amar Aleph and Echales l'shnei yamim v'chulu. And this Karban Chagiga is eaten for 2 days. Says the Gemara, Mas nistan deloy ke ben tema. The Mishnah is not like ben tema. Why not? The Tanya, we learned in a price of ben tema. Oimer says ben tema Chagiga abba ma Pesach. This Karban that we're discussing, Hare hi ke Pesach. It's the same din as the Karban Pesach, and therefore what? It's eaten for 1 day and 1 night. So the Mishnah is not like ben tema. The Mishnah says this Chagiga is eaten for 2 days and a night. And therefore, it's clearly not like Ben Tema, who says that the Chagiga has the exact same dinim, as the Gemara will elaborate on in a few moments, has the same dinim as the Karban Pesach, and it's only in 1 day, 1 night. Chagiga is Chamisha Asar, but Ben Tema agrees that the regular Chagiga, the Chagiga of Yantif, that is the Chol Sheyam of Leilecha, that is, yes, Ian, for 2 days and 1 night. But Chagiga is Arba Asar, and this Chagiga that we're talking about on the 14th, Yoitzeba Misham Simcha. You're Yoitze, you're Chiyav of Simcha and Yantif, and Vein Yoitzeba Misham Chagiga, but you're not Yoitze, you're din of Chagiga and Yantif again, because we keep on pointing out, maybe you'll get the Simcha, because the din of Simcha seemingly is a din in eating something good, is a din in happiness and Yantif, so that you could do with the meat. But could you be Yoitze your din of Chagiga and Yantif? No, because it's a different type of Chagiga. Says the Gemara, my time of the Ben Tema, what's the reason? Where did Ben Tema get this? Ben Tema comes along, it says the Karban Chagiga that's brought with the Pesach has the same din as the Pesach. Where did he get that? Kedemasti the Rav Chia Barei, like Rav Chia taught to his son, V'lo yolin la'boiker zevach chag ha-Pesach, that you cannot leave it over to the morning. Lo yolin laboiker, you cannot leave it over to the morning. The zevach, this carbon of the Chag HaPesach. Now the Gemara explains zevach Chag. What are those words referred to? Chagiga. What's the carbon of Yontif? That's the Chagiga. Ha-Pesach. What does word Ha-Pesach mean? Kemashmai, like it sounds. And therefore, says Ben Tema, says Rav Chia to his son, explaining the opinion of Ben Tema. And the Torah says you cannot leave it over, showing us that what? That has 1 day, 1 night, just like the regular Karban Pesach. And therefore, Ben Tema argues on the Mishnah and holds that the Karban Chagiga that's brought with the Pesach will only be in for 1 day and 1 night. And now we're going to We're going to have 3 questions, and we're going to try to basically figure out. We just learned that according to Ben Tema, this Chagiga, this unique carbon that's brought to fill up the person, that's only brought by Tyra, that's only brought during the week, it's only brought if you don't have enough meat of the Karban Pesach. Ben Tema says this carbon is equated and learned out from the Karban Pesach, and therefore it's only in 1 day, 1 night. The question is, how comparable and how like does it have to be to the Karban Pesach, meaning in all other dinim? We know there's other dinim of a Karban Pesach. This din of sli has to be roasted, so it has to be from a 1-year-old animal. There's the din that you're not allowed to bring a bone of the Karban Pesach. So those 3 dinim, does that also apply to the Karban Chagiga according to Ben Tema or not? So says the Gemara, Ibayu lehu Ben Tema, according to Ben Tema, does this Karban Chagiga have to be eaten roasted or not? Says the Gemara, what's the question? Is the equation that which we equate the Karban Chagiga to the Pesach only with regard to leaving it over the night? Avol it's li, but with regard to having it roasted, loi, that we don't equate it. It's equated for everything. Tashema says, I'll bring you a raya. What do we say this night? Everything is sleep. Amar Rav Chisda explains. Zudivrei Ben Tema. This is Ben Tema. Shmabi. No, we have a clear raya that Ben Tema holds that all the meat on that night, not only the Karban Pesach, but as well the Karban Shlamim, has to be bitzli. And therefore, the question number 1: how similar is this Chagiga to the Pesach according to Ben Tema, very similar. Not only 1 day, 1 night, also has to be Sli. Question number 2, Ibayilu, about 20 lines down. First word in line is Ibayi. Ibayilu le Ben Tema ba min abakar oy eno ba min abakar. According to Ben Tema, it's have to be the same type as animal as the Karban Pesach. Says the Gemara, ba min anakevos, eno ba min anakevos. Can it be brought from a female? Karban Pesach is only a male. Ba bashti shanim, eno ba bashti shanim. Could it be a 2-year-old? The Karban Pesach can only be a 1-year-old. Now the Gemara explains, Ki actually Rachman le Pesach. When do we equate it to Karban Pesach? Lemididachilo, with regard to eating it. Tzli, 1 day, 1 night. Avalachol merely loy. But for all other dinim, the fact, the type of animal, maybe we do not equate it. Oidamar perhaps loishna. There is no difference. So again, question number 2, how similar the Karban Chagiga that's brought with the Karban Pesach is going to be. Says the Gemara, Tashema, I'll bring you a proof. Chagiga Abba Ma Pesach. 2 lines before the wide lines, the Chagiga that's brought together with the Karban Pesach. Harehi Ki Pesach. It's like the Pesach. Ba Min HaTzayin. It's brought from the flock. Veina Ba Min HaBakar. Ba Min HaScharim has come from a male. Veina Ba Min HaNekevos. And it cannot be brought from a female. Ba Bashinasa, it has to be a 1-year-old. Veino Ba Bashishanim, it can't be a 2-year-old. Veino Necheles, and it cannot be eaten El Yoim Belayla, 1 day and 1 night. Veino Necheles El Tzli, can be eaten only roasted. Veino Necheles El Menuyav, it can be eaten only to someone who's registered on the Karban Chagiga. So this brisa clearly says that the Chagiga is mamish identical almost to the Karban Pesach. So says the Gemara, who is the author of this brisa? Man Shamis Lei, this Lei Haisvara, who holds of this Svara that the Chagiga be in for 1 day, 1 night. Ben Teva, Shema Mina, Mikulamil Sabina, Shema Mina. A clear raya that is not only with regard to eating the 1 day, 1 night, the fact that it has to be roasted, but as well with regard to the animal itself. It has to be a 1-year-old. It has to be from Bakar. Sorry, yeah, it has to be from Bakar. Has to be from Soin. I'm sorry, and as well. It has to be from Sain, and as well, it has to only be a 1-year-old female. 1-year-old male, I'm sorry. Says Gemara Bayalu, 4 lines into the wide lines. Leben Tema, 3rd question, according to Ben Tema, now, other dinim, what's the din of a Karban Pesach? You're not allowed to break 1 bone, which obviously makes it difficult to eat, because you have to eat every dot of the meat, but you can't break any of the bones. How are you going to get out the meat from the brain? How are you going to get out the meat from all the other parts of the animal? But you're not allowed to break a bone. Says the Gemara, but so this Karban Chagiga, does it have the same din or not? The Pesach, even though it's equated to Pesach, maybe what? Maybe with regard to breaking the bone, it says Bai with regard to the Karban Pesach. Bai v'lei b'chagiga. Only it's a special din by the Karban Pesach not to break the bone. Or perhaps I buy because of lei b'baslu dasa, and it's not teaching me a din that's only a din of breaking the bone by the Karban Pesach. Says the Gemara Tashema. I'll bring you a rayo. Sakin shenimsa bar basar. And this could be a bit of a lengthy discussion. The first 2 questions were clear-cut answers. This question, whether there's a din of shviras ha'etzem, whether you let it break a bone of the Karban Chagiga, is a bit more of a lengthy discussion. Says the Gemara, Sakin shenimsa bar basar. You find a knife on the 14th, Erev Pesach. Find a knife in the middle of the street. What's the question? You don't know if this knife is tar, this knife is tameh. Are you allowed to use this knife for the shechita of the Karban Pesach? Says the Gemara, 7 lines from the bottom of the Amud, Sheichi b'miyad. You're allowed to use it right away. You could assume if there's a knife lying around on the 14th, everyone knows that what? You're going to have to shech the Karban Pesach, so no one will leave their knife lying around in a state of Tama. Someone lost the knife today, and therefore, if he lost it, obviously he toiveled it prior. Bishlei shaser. But if you find the knife, and obviously every time you toivel something, the important point to remember is you have to be toivel, and you have to wait for Erev Shemesh for nightfall. So we could assume on the 14th, the guy took care of it already. Bishlei shaser. But on the 13th, Shaina umatbil. You have to be toivel it again. Because if you find something on the 13th, what's your proof that someone knew that it's going to be used for the Karban Pesach? It's 2 days before Yantif, and therefore you have to toivel it again. Kupats, kaifitz. Let's say you found a meat cleaver which is not necessarily good for the shechita, but it's good for dismembering, it's good for cutting up a carbon. So then bein bazeh, whether it's the 13th or whether it's the 14th, shayno matbil, you have to be toivel it again. You can't assume that you wanted it for the Karban Pesach. You can't assume that they knew it was going to be used and therefore they toiveled it. Says the Gemara. Let's see how this brayah plays out. Mani, who's this brayah? Ilim Rabbanan. If they didn't tell me it's an opinion of the Rabbanan, again, the Rabbanan do not hold that the Karban Chagiga is equated to the Karban Pesach. They hold the Karban Chagiga, of course, you're allowed to break a bone, you don't have to eat it sli, it could be a 2-year-old, etc. So according to the Chachamim, 1 second, Ma'ishna Saki in the mitzvah, What's the reason that we assume that the knife was taiveled? Is because the chazil Pesach. So we assume that on the 14th, any knife that was lost b'tayra. Someone taiveled it. Why? Because they knew they're going to have to use it for the shechita of the Pesach. But according to the Rabbanan, kupatz nami hachazil chagiga. According to the Chachamim, if someone lost their cleaver on the 13th, we should also assume that they taiveled it. Why? Because for the chagig, according to the chachamim, you cut it up. That's how you dismember the animal. There's no issue with breaking the bones. So why would there be a differentiation between the meat cleaver and the regular knife? Elolav, what must the answer be? To ben temai, the price must be ben tema. And therefore we have a raya that you're not allowed to break the bones, and that's the reason why there'll be a differentiation, there'll be a different din between the meat cleaver and between the sakin. Says the Gemara, loy, no, that's not accurate. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not accurate. Loy, Rabbanim, really, it's according to the opinion of Rabbanim. And now we're going to have a bunch of ways of proving and showing that it's a case where you did not necessarily bring the chagiga, and therefore, if you find this knife on the 13th, you can't necessarily bring a proof as to what the din would be, according to Betema, because there's no chagiga brought at all. Says the Gemara, because they brought it on Shabbos, and on Shabbos there's no chagiga. Ask the Gemara 1 second, what does the Sefer that price to say? The Sefer says it's talking about Shabbos. So obviously the question is going to be, the Reisha is not talking about Shabbos. Let's read the Sefer. Says the Gemara, if it 40 falls out of Shabbos, Shech B'miyad, you shechta right away. Ubechamisha also, Shech B'miyad, and on the 50, shechta right away. Nim says, Kupat, if you find this meat cleaver, kshura l'sakin, tied together with a knife, then a reif kisakin, it's like the knife, meaning, then we assume it was lost together, and just like the knife one we need to use, the Kupat one we need to use. Therefore, we assume it's tahar. But the point is, this Sefer is talking about Shabbos. The Reisha is not talking about Shabbos. So we're back to Araya. Says Gemara, no. You know what the case is as we move along to Ayin Amid Beis. The case is that you had enough meat. Since you had enough meat, you're not bringing this chagig at all. Says Gemara, Yadi. How do you know on the 13th, 2 days before Yantif, that you can have enough meat at the Pesach that you're not going to bring chagiga? Gemara says, fine. El Shabbat b'tama. Case that you brought a b'tama, there is no chagiga either. Says Gemara, how do you know you're going to be tamei? Says Gemara, the mis nasi. The nasi was nifter, and therefore the whole klai so let's go to the vaya, and therefore it's clear that it's going to be brought b'tama. Says Gemara, 1 second. The mis nasi aim is, when was the nasi nifter? If the nasi was nifter on the 13th, sakin lamali the mitvali. So why, if you find a sakin, a regular knife, would you have a taiveled it? Why you taivel it? Anyways, you're going to bring the carbon b'tama. So if you need the carbon b'tama, what's the point of taiveling the knife? Ela demiz barbasar. Must be that the nasi was nifter on the 14th. Says the Gemara, ma'ishna sakin the mitzvah. So why in the sakin, the knife, we assume you taivel to do the shechita? Ma'ishna kupat tzoloi mitzvah. And why this meat cleaver did you not taivel it? You also going to have to use it for the chagiga. Says the Gemara, the Nasi Goises, the Nasi was on his deathbed. So therefore, Bishlaish Asar, on the 13th, Sakin, with regard to the knife, the Chad Sveika, you have one suffix on that knife of the 13th, meaning, is the Nasi going to die or not? And therefore, what do? Matvale, therefore you go and you're taivel the knife. However, the Kupats, the meat cleaver, the Trey Sveiki, we have 2 Sveikas, therefore says the Gemara, Loi Matala, you're not going to be taivel it. And that is the reason why, says the Gemara, we find this differentiation between the meat cleaver and between the knife. Let's just see 2 Rashis over here. I know it's a little bit late. Let's just see Rashi. Rashi says, Sakin, with regard to the knife, Rashi is actually a bit further down in the Amid, smack in middle. Sakin, the Chad Sveika, says Rashi, who, maybe the Nasi would die, and you're going to have to bring a Batoma. Mishamach Sveika, that's one suffix. They're not going to stop being taivel it. They're going to taivel it. Why? Maybe the Nasi won't die, and therefore, what are you going to have to do? If you ask the Pesach B'Tayra, you're going to have to bring the Pesach B'Tayra, and you're not going to have a knife. So on the one suffix, you're going to go and table that knife. However, let's read one more Rashi. Avol Kupitz the Trace Fakey. There's 2 Sfakes on the meat cleaver. Why? Misagle Mitayra Tefillah, you're not going to be table at all. Why? What are the 2 Sfakes? Number 1, Shama Yamus, that maybe the Nasi is going to die, and you're not going to be the Chagiga at all. That's one suffix. And even if the Nasi does not die, Shema Ani Lo Yizar Maybe you won't need it. Why not? Maybe I'll have enough meat. What about the Chagiga of Yantif? It's just a tefillah. I can be table it tomorrow on the 14th. Therefore, someone is not going to go and table it. So the Gemara is proving that's the reason why there's differentiation, because with regard to the klipat, there's a double suffix, because the Chagiga there's always a suffix. Maybe you'll have enough meat, you won't bring it. And number two, maybe the Nasi will die, maybe he will not. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, about 8 lines down, Yehuda ben Dortai, first word of the line is Dortai, Pirish, he explained, Pirishu, he's separated from Klal Yisrael, V'Dartai, Benoi, and Dartai his son, V'Holach v'Yashiv LaBitarim. And they went and they sat in the south, far away from Yerushalayim, far away from the base of Mikdash. Why? So they didn't have to come and do Eila Regel. They didn't have to come and bring the carbon Pesach. The thing is, only someone within proximity of the Beis HaMikdash, Yerushalayim, have to come and bring the carbon Pesach. When someone's very far away, he doesn't have to. Why did he do this? Amar, he said, what is going to happen? Elio, Navi might come this year. The Amar Le'am, he didn't ask, Yisrael, why didn't you bring the carbon Chagiga on Shabbos that year? The Pesach fell on Shabbos, like this year. So he's going to ask, why didn't you bring the Chagiga? What's Klal Yisrael going to answer? There are 2 Gedolei Adar, Shmai V'Avdal, Yijin Chachamim Gedolim. They're great sages, V'Darshina Gedolim, and great speakers. V'Larm Lam Yisrael. Chagiga Deichas Shabbos, and they never taught us that the Chagiga is Deichas Shabbos, and therefore what? Therefore, they're not going to bring the carbon Chagiga. So this Ben Dortai, he himself felt the Chagiga should yes be Deichas Shabbos. He seemingly went and he took the equation of the Chagiga that's brought with the Pesach, equating it and equaling it to the carbon Pesach to the next extreme. He seemingly said not only has to be the same as the Pesach and all its dinim, but even when we brought in Shabbos. But he can't do that because Klal Yisrael doesn't agree. So what do you want to do? He wanted to stay far away from Yerushalayim, so he didn't have to get involved in the suffix, just in case Eliyahu Navi comes. Says the Gemara, Amar, my time to Ben Dortai. Where did Ben Dortai get this from? The Chsevet says in the Pasuk, Soinu Bakar. What does it mean, bring the Pesach from Soinu Bakar? That's not true. The Pesach is only brought from a sheep or a goat. Elo, you know what the reason is? Soin the Pesach. Bakar, that's the Chagiga. It's teaching me about the Garmin Chagiga. V'amar Rachman, and the Torah says, V'zavachta Pesach. And therefore, that's how Ben Dortai learned that this Chagiga is the same day of the Pesach, and you bring it even on Shabbos. Amar Avashi, Vanan time with the Prusha, Nekav and Ifresh? I don't understand. There's this one person named Ben Dortai. He's arguing on the entire Klal Yisrael. He's arguing Shemaev. He's arguing in Italian. He's one guy sitting in a corner, and we're explaining his reasoning. He's wrong. Why are you explaining it? So what about the pasuk? Says Gemara. Elikral Rav Nachman Udasa. Amar Rav Nachman Rav Avua Minayin. How do we know? Says Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Avua. How do we know L'Maisar Pesach Shikar of Shlamim? Let's say you separated an animal to be a carbon Pesach, and then you lost it, so you separated another animal to be carbon Pesach, and then lo and behold, you find the first animal, so you have an extra carbon Pesach. What do? So how do you know you bring it as a Shlamim? Shenemar v'zavach lePesach l'Hashem l'kecha soinu bakar v'chi Pesach min ha'bakar, but it's not. Ba'aleina Pesach ba'alim min ha'kvas min ha'izim. So says Rav Nachman Amar Rabba Avua. You know we learn L'Maisar Pesach. Rather, if you have an excess Pesach, meaning one that you separated, now it's extra. And that's what the pasuk is teaching me. And therefore says the Gemara, Ben Dortai, why are we trying to explain his reasoning? He's arguing and everyone. He's wrong. Now the Gemara says, why is he wrong? According to the Rabbanan, practically, why is this Chagiga not Deicha Shabbos? It's a carbon Tzibur. Amar Rav Eloi, Misham Rabbi Ben Safar, Amar Kra, and you should rejoice and bring the carbon for 7 days. Bishana Shiva, Shiva Yamim Bashana. Shiva, says the Gemara, Shemaina Have. What do you mean you only bring the carbon for 7 days? You should bring the carbon for 8 days of Yantif. Ella, what do we learn out from here? Mikan the Chagiga she'eino doiches Shabbos. Chagiga is not doiches Shabbos, therefore it's 7 days. Says the Gemara, clear right, not like Ben Dortai. Chagiga will never be doiches Shabbos. Kiasa Ravin Amar Amar to the thing Rabbi, I said this over in front of my Rabbi and Bamim. Shiata Moitzi Ela Shisha. Sometimes you only have 6 days to bring the carbon Chagiga. Going Shechal Yet to reach Shechag Shabbos. So if the first day of Pesach is on Shabbos, the last day of Pesach is on Shabbos, so you can have 6 days. How are you telling me that we learn out from the pasuk that you bring it for 7 days? There are times it's only 6 days. Amar Abaya, Avin Tichla. childless oven. His oven had a lot of his children were nifter. What are you saying? We're learning out from the pasuk that it's impossible to be 8. 7 is the norm. 7 is the norm. You're showing me it could be 6. That's great. All we learned out of the pasuk is that the norm is 7 and not 8, meaning it is not brought on Shabbos. That concludes for today the Karban Chagiga that's brought together with the Karban Pesach. The 3 questions that we had from Bedema, how similar is it? We came out that it is very similar. It has to be the same age. But when it comes to being Deicha Shabbos, this Karban will never be Deicha Shabbos. And once again, we'll give a birthday wishes to everyone that we should continue learning in good health for many, many more daf, many more Masechtas, and Mir Hashem, until, like we learned today, Eliyahu should come, till the day that we'll celebrate together here in Yerushalayim.